Hi there, my name's Ezekiel Rowland, and I'm going to be starting a new series today on my channel where I'm going to do a in-depth reading of Carl Czerny's Opus 500. So the goal of this series is going to be to work our way through all 4 volumes of this massive work at the piano and also at the desk here. So today's video is just going to be at the desk, because we're not going to actually be doing any of the lessons yet. So we're just going through the very beginning of the book, because I just want to give a little bit of background, to this book and to the 19th century and to piano teaching in that sense in general. So I have here in front of me just a printed out copy. Now I am planning to make a new edition of this that can be sellable on Amazon, or potentially just getting someone else to do it. We'll see how that goes. I don't know, because that's a whole can of worms, making a book. But this is really one of those 19th century publications that really deserves to be republished. And you just really can't find it anywhere, so it's a massive shame, honestly. All right, anyway, so I have in front of me, they're actually stapled into the sections that we're basically going to be working through. So we'll see how much we get through today, but let's start with this first section. So here we have the cover page. Now this is Czerny himself. Carl Czerny, born in Vienna, February 21st, 1791. Okay. Now, turning the page over, we have the dedication. So, I can't quite read all of this because the calligraphy is quite difficult for me to read, but he dedicated this work actually to the Queen, to Queen Victoria in England, and it's a really special dedication, and this whole work's really special. So this was published in Vienna, 1839, as well, for your information. And then the really cool thing about this is that we have the list of subscribers. Okay, so if any of you guys have heard of Kickstarter or anything like that, basically this is the 19th century equivalent. So Czerny wanted to make this book, and he was like, I'll make it if people prepay for it. Okay, because he didn't want to work for, I'm guessing it would take years to write a book like this, a massive 4-volume work like this. I think it would have took him a couple of years at least, and he just was like, okay, well, it needs to be paid for before I do it. And so that's what a list of subscribers is. All of these people actually prepaid for the book and to have their names in the subscriber list as well. And I just hit the microphone, so I'm not going to do that again. And yeah, so they prepaid to have their names in the book and to get a copy when it would be finished. So now you might say, okay, that's great, but the interesting thing about this is just how many names there are. It's really, really a lot, and these are only the subscribers from England, because the names are all English. But I believe he would have had subscribers from other countries too, but they're not present, at least in this edition. This is the English translation, so maybe there's a list of subscribers in the other editions in different names, I don't know. But anyway, as we can see, it's a good, as I just flipped through it, it's a good 6 or 7 pages of names, and you can just imagine the amount of money that was sent to him. So that's a good deal, in my opinion. So he did well for himself. This is the facsimile. of his writings. Really, really interesting to go through here, even compositionally. But we have, let me read it quickly. So, facsimile, canon on the exercises, canon and exercises of octaves. So it's a canon in octaves. It's marked presto with the metronome mark of dotted half note 66, and it says Charles Czerny, which is in his handwriting. This is all his handwriting. The really interesting thing as well, compositionally, if we have a look at this, we can see at the beginning he gives the time signature, the clef, and the key signature, and the brace. But on the following lines, he only gives the brace, which is very interesting because even by today's standards, we obviously omit the time signature, but we usually give the key signature in the following lines, and also I believe we also give the clef as well, but now that's escaping me. I think we do. I think we give the clef as well. Let me just quickly check a book. Here I have Scriabin piano sonatas. Let me check. Yeah, so we give the clef and the key signature in every line. But we can see there that by hand he decided to omit all of those in favor of having more space, I guess. And it's not a bad idea. It's still very clear for me to read and everything. So I'm just going to go ahead and move on. There's one other thing actually, which is the B's indication down here in the facsimile. This is quite uncommon in piano music to see this. Actually, when I saw it, I had to look it up. I wasn't sure what it meant, but it is pronounced B's and spelt B-I-S, and it means do it twice. So you can see within this slur that he gives, which is obviously not a slur, it's just showing where he wants you to repeat from. So, because we can see these dots as well that come off it. So he's saying, do these two bars, then do them again, and then you play the ending. So also very useful for any composers out there who want to use the B's indication. It's totally a good idea. And I think now's a pretty good time for me to just insert my performance of this canon into the clip. So enjoy. Okay, moving on. Hope you enjoyed that. Contents of the first volume. So we have the portrait, the dedication to Her Most Gracious Majesty the Queen, the facsimile of the author's writings. So we've been through all that. So now we're going to have a look at the preface and the preliminary observations, or perhaps we'll just look at the preface. Let's see how we go for time. But there are, in the first volume, there are 19 lessons. So there's a lot for us to get through on this journey. But okay, let's move on. Let's go have a look at the preface. So, preface by the author. I'm just going to read this and I'll stop at any interesting parts. Every succeeding year, pianoforte playing is more widely cultivated and more highly rated in public estimation. The instrument itself is constantly receiving progressive improvements, both as to its tone and to the manner of treating it. Melody, that noblest branch of the art, can now be expressed on it in the fullest and richest tones and most varied shades of expression. Numerous composers and virtuosi hourly invite us to practice by the invention of new passages and effects not before thought of. And every day serves more firmly to establish the conviction that that the pianoforte can never be displaced nor even thrown into the shade by any other instrument. As also that it is the only one really adapted for the fair sex, while it is of all others that of which the study is least likely, that of which the study is least likely to cause any injury to the health. All right, let's stop there. Now he says a really interesting thing, which is that the instrument, the pianoforte, is very well adapted for the fair sex, and that it is the least likely to cause injury. Now, think about this for a second. It's very interesting that he says this, because it tells us a lot about the time that we already kind of know that the piano was treated that way as a more feminine instrument in that time, and that the violin and such was more masculine, as in played mostly by men and vice versa. But the interesting thing he says that is least likely to cause injury. We would not agree with this today. This statement that he just made is perfectly contradictory to what we believe today. Now, there's actually been a study done, I believe it was even in this country, in Australia, I think, where they discovered, I could be totally wrong, but I think it's right, that it was 70% of conservatory students that were female had experienced some sort of playing related injury, which was like tendonitis or RSI or something like that. I think it was, I don't know if it was of the people who had injuries. I think it was of an injury group. There was like 30% that were injured were men, and 70% were women, or something like this. So it's actually, and obviously, guys, this is very obvious because women just tend to have smaller hands, and they're demanded to play all these passages in tenths and all this sort of stuff that is just seriously much more difficult because of the handspan issues that happen, and they overly affect women, which is just biology. But it's interesting that he says it's least likely, when we would disagree completely, and that it's most likely to cause injury for a lot of people, but also a lot for women. I've dealt with tendonitis in my left hand before. It was last year, and it was playing related. More than likely it was playing related. And I've adjusted my technique since then, and it's gotten fine. It's been fine, but that's not the case for a lot of people. I have a lot of friends I know who have dealt with playing related injuries, some of them men, some of them women, but it's very common. It's really common for any pianist in the conservatories nowadays to deal with some sort of playing related injury, and not just pianists, but other instruments too. So this comment's really interesting. And guys, it's for the reason that, he's not lying. It's totally true. The instrument is least likely to cause injury over other instruments, which is true. If you're playing it properly, if you're not practicing 12 hours a day, non-stop, with no break, you're not going to get injured playing piano. Okay? So he's right. He's definitely right. It's just we overdo it these days, I think. All right, let's continue. This continual advance in its general utility demands, of course, a corresponding degree of perfection in the elementary works written for the instrument, in order to unite the more recent discoveries on the mechanism of fingering with what was previously known, and which have become necessary in consequence of the increased refinement of our musical taste, which is due to the more modern class of compositions and to the improvements made in the structure of the instrument itself, all of which causes necessarily exert considerable influence on the style of performance, even of the much older and more simple productions. Much the greater number of those who begin to learn the pianoforte consist of children from 8 to 10 years of age, and in truth we ought to commence as early as possible, if we wish to attain any degree of proficiency in playing. For this reason, it is necessary to explain the first rudiments, on which in fact everything depends, in a full, clear, and comprehensive manner. For here, anything like laconic brevity is more particularly misplaced, since the mere untaught child is not capable of unraveling nor comprehending it, nor indeed are many teachers themselves. Guys, really understand that passage. Any of you piano teachers out there probably know, you can probably hear what he's talking about here is that this laconic brevity being particularly misplaced, like put that into modern words. If you rush through the lessons, the child doesn't understand, and it's going to create a massive problem later on when you have to go back and fix their foundation, or someone else has to go back and fix their foundation because you don't teach them right from the beginning. Okay, because you rush. So he's talking about this. Okay, in many instruction books, the rules are laid down so concisely that the pupil may in a few minutes learn by heart the words in which they are expressed. But it requires months, nay even years, and innumerable repetitions of those rules by the teacher before they can accustom themselves to follow the precepts with practical correctness. These reflections every teacher must have often made. How many pupils sacrifice years to discover and rectify what was misunderstood or erroneous in their first instructions? It's exactly what I said before. The rushing leads to issues that you have to come back and fix later on that could just not have happened in the first place if you had have taught them right from the beginning. So he's right on. That's exactly correct. Okay, anyway, we'll keep going. The first part of the present method is written according to this view of the case, and with the endeavour that beginners of every age, without any waste of time and in a manner not unpleasant, may obtain a clear, comprehensive, and well-grounded explanation of the elementary principles of music and of playing on the pianoforte, and open to their talent a correct and regular path towards a high degree of refinement in execution, and that pupils whose circumstances will not admit of their employing an eminent master may by a frequent and attentive perusal of each chapter and an industrious practice of the examples find all the means requisite to ensure a well-regulated progress. And lastly, that many young teachers may herein find a desirable and certain guide to preserve their pupils from falling into errors and to accelerate their progress towards perfection. Okay, so there he's talking actually that this method could be used to self-learn. And honestly, guys, I hope you get that sort of benefit out of this series. If I serve as your guide if you're a beginner and you're actually watching these videos and you want to learn in this historical manner, where from a method written by Czerny, who was just probably the greatest teacher of the 19th century, the most sought after teacher of the 19th century. You guys saw the list of subscribers earlier. It was insane. There's a lot of people who knew what Czerny was about and really wanted this book. So if you guys are learning from this at all, that's awesome. And he thinks that this is a work which you can self-teach using this method if you are a very industrious student and you practice a lot the examples and you really focus and you really understand what the chapter is talking about. But I'm going to help you with that. So I'll put some of these older English words into something we can understand. So the second part contains the doctrine of fingering, established on simple principles and illustrated by so many practical examples, that by the mere playing of them, the pupil will acquire, together with a well-digested theoretical knowledge of the subject, all the varied mechanical facility of finger which he can desire, and without which mere theory is fruitless and unprofitable. So second part's about fingering. Great. The third part has been written with equal attention as to completeness, and I have endeavored as far as was possible to enumerate and explain all the difficulties contained therein, and also to render clear and intelligible such subjects as for the most part depend on the feelings, ear, fancy, imitative powers, and even caprice of the player. So that's interesting. By a careful and patient elaboration of this treatise, I have also endeavored to satisfy a wish expressed in many quarters, that I should form into a systematic and well-digested whole the views and principles which I had collected during 30 years' practical experience in teaching, and I now dedicate this work to youthful talent with the wish that they may avail themselves of it to ensure a well-grounded and at the same time easy and rapid acquirement of an agreeable, widely spread, and honorable art, for as the use, so will be the gain. Guys, what he just said here is it's really actually a very beautiful thing, which he says that I dedicate the work to youthful talent with the wish that they avail themselves of it. Guys, he's saying he dedicates it to you so that you don't need it. So that once you learn everything, you don't need instruction. You don't need this. You can be your own artist once you've done this. That's his goal here. And guys, that brings us to the end of this section, okay? And I think that's probably enough from me for this video. Let's do another one of these very soon, and we'll talk about the first lesson, and I'll be seated at the piano, and I'll go over all those things with you guys then at that point. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.